All right, so we are ready to go. Welcome to another edition of Think with a Drink. This is the weekly webinar series brought to you by the Aries Foundation for Financial Education. And this one is we're having a little fun with you this week because we are paying tribute to not only the movie, but the little furry rodent as well in what we are calling Financial Groundhog Day, or what our missteps, financial missteps that we somehow keep repeating over and over and over again, and some of the reasons why that happens, and maybe some of the ways that we can sort of break out of that or stop the behavior from happening. Before we get started up, we do have a couple of housekeeping things to go through here. First, the checklist before we get started, just to know we are recording the event, but you don't have to worry about your camera or anything because it only records what's on the screen. There is a chat box, so if you do have questions, please feel free to type them into the chat box. And my co-pilot, who I will introduce in a second, is here. He's here to chime in, but also to make sure that any of the questions that get asked get thrown out there, and also that we stay on time this evening. Speaking of your pilots, my name is Tom Alessi. I am the president of the Aries Foundation. I have been in financial services for 23 years now. I am an investment advisor. That means I am a fiduciary whenever giving any guidance or advice to my clients. I want to bring in my vice president, Craig. Craig, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. So I'm Craig Richardson. As Tom said, I'm the vice president of Aries Foundation. I've been doing financial services a little over 17 years now, and I specialize in working with families and small businesses to help them put together a financial plan and achieve their financial goals.
Tremendous. Appreciate that. Craig will be joining us. He'll be chiming in as we go along, but also, like I said, he'll be manning the chat box. So if any questions come up, he'll bring them up, or sometimes he'll just answer them while we're in session because it's easier that way. So you can always direct message him inside the chat box. So we told you Think Was a Drink was brought to you by the Aries Foundation for Financial Education. We are a nonprofit. We're located in Newton, Massachusetts. You can visit our website. It's www.ariesfoundation.org. Aries is A-R-I-E-S, just for those out there who spell it all different kinds of crazy ways. ariesfoundation.org. And the mission behind Aries is trying to help everyone have a better relationship with their money. And that really goes to the heart of what we're going to be talking about tonight, because some of those financial missteps and things that happen are behaviors and triggers that we get tripped up by because of certain emotional conditions or certain ways that we react when we're dealing with our finances. So this sort of ties right into everything that we talk about at Aries as far as our mission is concerned. I'm not going to go through the disclosures because what's the point? Honestly, we're a nonprofit. Just know this is done as purely educational and informational. That's all we ever ask, is if you're ever going to share it. So now we get to the fun part of the evening, because we call this Think with a Drink. And we do that because we want this to be a little bit more casual, a little bit more relaxed, and we can't think of a better way to do that than if we're having something nice and cold to imbibe on. This night I'm drinking, it is called Fall Forward from Newport Brewery down in Newport, Rhode Island. And I thought Fall Forward would go along with the whole groundhog, spring ahead, that type of thing. No. Silly me, right? They mean literally fall forward. This is a double IPA with an APV of 8.8%.
Wow.
Yeah, I have no idea what I got myself in for. Fortunately, I'm not really driving this evening or flying this plane, because there would not be much of that. But they mean literally fall forward. This is no spring ahead stuff, right? But that's what I thought in terms of going through it. What do you got for this evening, Greg?
They have a couple of those would be falling down. Forget forward. I in honor of you not being able to get it the other day, I have a Boston Lager here from Sam Adams. So
yeah, I was at a place where Sam was there. For those who don't know, one of my superpowers is being able to go into any location, stare at the beer menu, and pull the one beer that's been removed or is gone, the keg is empty, etc. I can do it no matter where I go, and I did it the other night with Sam. Who would have thought? Skål.
Oh, that's good. That's why it was gone.
Oh yeah, that's very hoppy. Wow.
Oh, so you're feeling hoppy now?
Yeah, there we go. See, bringing ahead. That's the whole idea. All right. So our agenda for this evening. So Financial Groundhog Day, what does that mean? Missteps that we keep repeating, why it happens, some action steps, some things to be thinking about as you go along, and how planning can help with this process. And then if there are any more questions, we always stay available to answer questions as we go along. So as we said, we are paying tribute to the movie and to the little groundhog with well, it's Groundhog Day again, right? So the idea behind Financial Groundhog Day is that whole idea of this is certain actions or certain things that keep happening or that I keep doing over and over. I wanted to play, what's this? It was I Got You, Babe, right? Sonny and Cher.
Oh, yeah. That's the first song that plays on the
radio every morning. I wanted to put that in the background when I clicked the slide, but I was afraid like copyright issues and stuff. So I didn't want to do that.
Well, good morning, campers. It's cold outside.
That type of thing. Like it's that feeling of realizing, like, what did I do? Did I do this again? How did I do this? Why did I do this? And sort of trying to help you sort of get a sense of there are things, behaviors, triggers, and emotional reactions that you have that cause that to happen, and ways to maybe sort of try to catch yourself or put yourself in a better place so that when it does, inevitably we all fall down, right? Look at me, I'm in the fall forward. Like Craig said, I'm in the fall down category with this thing. But you want to be in a place where that's not going to happen as often, right? So that you can be ahead of it.
Well, even Bill Murray eventually learned from his mistakes, right?
Well, there's the thing is sometimes, and we'll talk about that because that's some of it that happens with it, with the emotions behind why it happens along with that. So we will talk about that, and so one of those first things, right? It's being truthful, right? In any relationship, it's being honest and being truthful, but we're specifically talking about the relationship that you have with your money, right? So you got to be honest with your money. You can't lie to your money. You can't tell your money it's going to be used for something else and then use it for something. It's that type of thing that happens. Like I'm putting you over here because I want to save for something, but then next thing you know, the next day you spend it on something else.
It's just like my favorite TV show, House. House says everybody lies. And I think you're right. You say we have to be honest with our money, but we're not honest with our money.
No, and we'll talk about that as part of it, right? That whole honesty and facing things, it's a big part of it and going through it. But, it is we do joke with this, but it is the idea of trying to understand or come to grips with the fact that if you're not understanding, and this is more for what Craig and I deal with a lot of people, is if you don't have a handle on or don't understand how your money works or what it does, that's another part of it. And we'll talk about that because that's another piece to it. But that's being honest with yourself as well as your money to say, well, okay, I'm not really sure of things and I don't deal with it. And some people will talk about that, just brush it off.
Yeah, I think your groundhog is barking.
Yes. It's funny when it's a little thing. I meant to pull it up as a trivia thing because, like, do you know the original animal that was used and it wasn't a groundhog for Groundhog Day?
What was it?
It was a hedgehog.
Oh, hedgehog.
Yes.
It went from a hedgehog to a groundhog?
In Germany, it was originally the festival was done and they used a hedgehog. And when they came to America, they wanted to do this, keep the tradition going, except for they realized that hedgehogs they don't grow here, don't have hedgehogs. So they chose groundhogs instead.
That's interesting.
All right. So what some of the missteps that we keep repeating, right? Some of the actions or something behind it, right? So one of the first ones is impulse buying, right? So it's not having control on how we're spending. And that's one of the biggest things I think that happens to everybody that, whether it's, hey, I want that shiny new bauble, or, hey, the Super Bowl's coming up, I got to get a bigger screen television, or whatever the case may be, this feeling of like, okay, I'm just going to go out and buy it without really thinking about the consequences of what happens after we bought it.
But I want it.
Want it. Yeah. I mean,
Not enough reason. I deserve it. And everybody on TV tells me I deserve it. So,
And we're going to tie this into some of the behaviors that happen, but this is one of the things that gets us in trouble, right? That impulse buying. That's one of the things that happens, right? Having overdrafts, the overdraft fees, not being aware of how much is in the account and what we're spending. And this stuff adds up to millions and millions of dollars in cost to the US consumer that banks are charging you in overdraft fees.
yeah, nothing like trying to withdraw $20 and having to pay a $35 fee for it.
Yeah.
You end up paying a bigger fee than you wanted in the first place. Right.
So this is something that happens, and realizing that, now that's an extra debit that comes away from the account. There's now less money in the account, and this behavior happens over and over again, right? And then the other one is not paying attention to credit.
Mhm.
Just paying bills on time. Right, being late with your bills, because those are late charges, those are late fees that occur. And just like overdraft fees, they add up to major, major dollars that take away from your money being able to do other things for you. And then we find ourselves getting into some of these other problems because money just left for no reason, because we weren't paying attention to either the overdraft, or because we didn't pay a bill on time. So those are some of the things that happen, and some of the missteps that we do keep repeating. Another one is we put everything on a credit card. And there's nothing wrong with putting everything on a credit card, but sometimes it gets us to lose that whole like money exchange if it's not real sometimes, right?
Mhm. Well, I mean, I think the industries itself are trying to find better and easier ways to divorce you from your money.
Yes.
Right. So if all you have to do is swipe, and it's like monopoly money, someone else is paying for it, not me. Or, in the case of some, sites, you just click a button because all your card information is already in there. You don't even have to swipe. You just click a button and say, I want it.
Right.
And it comes.
And so it's not a bad thing, because we sort of play both sides on this, Craig and I, because for purposes of tracking what you're spending, it's a great tool for that and being able to do it. The problem is if you're not paying attention and losing focus, like Craig said, it's becoming monopoly, or just, I'm not really paying attention to what I'm spending. That's a misstep, because now you don't have a handle on what's going out the door.
Right.
Being on the hamster wheel of debt, right? Craig and I talk about this one all the time, about this reoccurring, like we talked a little bit about how this happens, right? That's the impulse buying and buying everything on credit, that you find yourself overwhelmingly having to deal with debt. And debt just compiles and gets on top of itself. We've done a whole thing, and we keep talking about, we will bring it back again, about how to tackle debt and strategies and ways to really pare down and be better and handle and take care of your debt. But debt is one of those things that gets us into it. It's a misstep that keeps happening. We pay off the debt, and then what do, Craig? We turn around, we go buy something else, and we go back into debt.
Well, I mean, that's the issue. I mean, lots of people get into debt. Things can happen. You lose your job, someone gets sick, and there's an emergency that comes up that you weren't planning for, and you have a debt. And when that one-time thing happens, usually we do is we get ourselves under control. We pay the debt back. We get on track again. When we're talking about the hamster wheel of debt, this is really a cycle that you just keep repeating over and over. And like you just said, you have the person who will get out of debt by refinancing their house and go, well, look at all this money we have. Let's, now we can go on vacation with our credit card, guys, because we're debt free. So they just get back into this whole habit again. And a lot of times that's because they don't have, good saving habits. And that's what gets them back into that whole hamster wheel of debt. And sometimes that's a learned behavior. Sometimes their parents did the same type of behavior and they learned it from them. And then once you get into that cycle and then you learn it as a behavior, it's very difficult to change behavior.
Right, exactly. And that's where the missteps occur. And that's how we keep repeating it over and over again. And it goes sort of right in line with what you were talking about, is that we live beyond our means. right? We go beyond what our monthly expenditure, what our monthly income would allow, because we're trying to either keep up with the Joneses or buy that thing, or like you said, everybody's telling you, I should be able to have this, right? Why can't I have that? And go through it, so that you wind up in this. It's a reason that it happens, because you're trying to live beyond your means.
Well, and the other thing too is, industries out there know that people want to live beyond their means. That's why you're showing all these shows of the rich and famous and the Kardashians and all this glorious living. And why shouldn't I live the same way? And, oh, look, I've got the credit, I might as well do it. Because they don't care if you're paying 20% interest. They love it when you're paying 20% interest. I mean, they're getting rich on your being in debt. So that's why, the wealthy, everything's cheaper for the wealthy. They're not paying on debt. They're not paying interest. They're paying cash. They're getting a break half the time. So it's just, not only does debt weigh you down, it also keeps you down.
Yes, absolutely. It is part of it. And so these are the missteps that we keep repeating, things that trap us, as Craig was explaining, and go through, but it's more to the question as to why. Why does this happen? Why do we keep repeating these things? Why do these missteps, keep happening to us when we go through it? And when you look at it, one of the reasons is that it's not so much that, hey, we're trying to live paycheck to paycheck, but we don't think about the fact that we're living paycheck to paycheck. So there's no budget. There's nothing that says, here's my structured spending. Like Craig said, the money's coming in, the money's going out. There's nothing that's saying, I'm not worrying beyond my next paycheck.
Well, there's going to be another paycheck.
Right.
So why am I worried about it? I'm going to keep getting paid. I can make it up. Right.
But that's some of the things that lead us into the behaviors that happen. That's how the debt occurs. That's how spending over the limit occurs. So these are all things that tie in to why those missteps happen. One of the things in a lot of households, this is the case, is that there's only one person controlling the checkbook or controlling the finances or handling it all. So you have two spouses, but one spouse sort of handles all of the money and the other spouse doesn't. And it leads to, miscommunication. It leads to mishandling. It leads to, a lot of times the biggest argument is always about money.
Mm-hmm.
And then, debt, like we talked about, but it's taking on debt in a bad way, right? So it's like Craig talked about, debt is okay. There's good debt, like, a home with something that you need, something that's going to grow in value out over time is, like Craig described, going on vacation and using your credit cards to pay for it and then having to deal with the debt after the vacation. That's not good debt. You might have had a great time, but you're going to be paying for it for the next 5 years. And I'm not sure you're going to remember what you were doing, on the beach that afternoon.
Yeah. I mean, good debt is where you're taking someone's money and putting it to work for you, or it's going to make you money. Bad debt is where you're just paying more for something than you would have because you've got to pay extra because you couldn't pay for it in cash. So if it's losing value, it's bad debt. If it's gaining value, depending on the value, maybe good debt.
Yep. Yeah. And then the last one, we've already sort of bashed it and talked about it a little bit, but it's more of this attitude of pro-consumerism. Like this disregard for, having constraint. Why not buy the next thing? Why not it's the Super Bowl? Why not buy the next big television, or craziness that's out there? So it's an attitude sort of pro-consumerism that drives some of this behavior. Like it's almost what you would describe as like anti-frugal, right? Like this is somebody who did, I'm not going to count my pennies type of thing. I'm just going to go out and spend everything. I don't care.
Well, the other thing, Tom, is if you buy a bigger TV, I got to buy a bigger TV, right?
Yeah, right. See, there you go.
I mean, you can't have a bigger TV than I have. I mean,
Yes, I could just, if you had a big TV, I could just go to your house for the Super Bowl. We could do it that way, but then that would make sense, right? Instead of
Just like you buy, then I go to your house.
exactly. But there it is. It's that one up thing, like we talked about, living beyond your means and trying to. These are some of the reasons behind it. These are some of the things that cause us to make this happen without realizing that we're doing it. And then there's a couple of more, that are like, say, that's more personal reasons, right? Like, for most people, it's that they're not open to change, right? Change we know is hard. Change is very difficult. And trying to get somebody to change or alter how they've been with their money and finance is the biggest battle Craig and I wage basically every day, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You ignore the issues, right? The concerns that happen, the things that come up, you sort of tend to say, I'll deal with it tomorrow. Or like Greg said, I'm going to get a paycheck next week. I'll deal with it next week. It's this pushing off and pushing off of issues or problems that eventually grow bigger and fester and get worse. You hide or shy away from it. That, money, that's one thing with money. You can't hide from it. And people try to say, well, hey, I'm just, I don't want to deal with it, right? So that's the whole, how many times we hear that, I'm not very good with finance. I just don't pay attention to it. I don't deal with it.
Oh, every day.
Right.
Absolutely. Yep.
That's one of those things. So it's more of, yes, we understand that, but you have to face some of it. You got to turn and say, no, wait, I'm going to deal with it. I have to, not listening to family and friends, like people telling you, hey, this could be a problem, or have you thought of that, or doing something like that. We tend to sort of block out sometimes when people are trying to give us good advice.
You're saying like family intervention for financial reasons?
Yeah, something like that, it could be, and, not seeking professional assistance. Like if you have a problem with somebody and it's medical, you go see a doctor. If it's legal, you go see an attorney. If it's finance, you need to seek out the help of somebody who can help you do that.
Well, Tom, I think the other thing too we run into a lot is financial literacy hesitancy, or people just insecurity. They're insecure about what they don't know, right? So they don't want to ask the question because I should know the answer to that. It's like you're sitting in the back of the room. You don't want anybody to know you don't know something. You don't bother asking the question. And in a lot of cases, it's not a matter of even who do you ask.
Right.
Who knows, right? Who do you go to for this financial advice? And if you've made mistakes, it's even worse because people don't want to admit they made mistakes.
Exactly. Yeah, and that gets us to the next one. It actually leads right into, you would think Craig knew what was coming with all of this and just going through it. But it actually leads to the next one, which is ego, and the ego effect, right? And the ego effect really is this thing that you are prone making the same mistake over and over again because you believe you're going to change it or handle it differently the next time you face it, without asking for that help or that assistance. It's sort of the same thing, Greg, where it's instead of trying to say, I'm not going to deal with it. It's like, no, I'm going to be better the next time, right? I don't need anybody's help. I can do this, even though I just blundered through the whole thing or just caused myself all sorts of pain, I can do it.
Mm-hmm.
And the ego effect is real. So it's one of those things that you got to look inside yourself to figure out and find whether or not that's something that will wait. I might be doing that, and that's causing all of this to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So what can you do, right? So one of the things you can do is you can set up an automatic savings plan, right? So simply put, that's directing direct pay to a bank account, payroll direct deposit to a bank account. If you don't have money in the bank or you are trying to save for something, that is absolutely the number one way that you're at least going to be putting money away.
Mm-hmm.
What do we always say to people? Even if it's just $10 or $20, you're putting more than you have right now.
Yeah, you got to start somewhere, right? It's about recreating a new habit. It's about breaking old habits. And like we said before, change is very difficult. But if you don't have to think about the change, you can just set it and forget it. Well, then it's a little easier. And all you have to do now is look at it every once in a while and go, well, can I do a little more? Can I do a little more? And all of a sudden you start seeing that savings building up, and that becomes an easier habit because you see the positive outcome.
Right. And then the other is having goals. In this case, we're talking about family goals, but individual goals as well, right? Setting goals, understanding where you want to get to with what you want to achieve is a big thing. And they put family goals in there because it's more of having the conversation. Like what your goal may be different than what your spouse's goal is. What you want to save for may be different than what she wants to save for. So having that conversation and understanding that, hey, I want a fund for the kids' education, or like she's telling me, no, I don't want the kids. And, that's it. I'm not putting any money in them. We fed them and we held them. That was good enough. That's the thing, right? So to have that discourse back and forth as far as family goals are concerned. So these are some things.
Well, with every client I start with, it's always talking about what are those goals first. What's important to you first?
Right.
Money is like the second conversation we have. It's really about what are your priorities and goals. Because once you find those and you establish those, they become more important than the money. And so you're a little less afraid to deal with the money because that's a bigger objective.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, the other is to set up a saving strategy. Greg and I talk just about in every presentation we do, we talk about, what's in your buckets. But the idea there is setting up a savings plan that says I'm putting money away for short-term goals, midterm goals, and long-term goals. So I have these strategies, like Craig said, having goals set up, but then also having a plan to fulfill those goals.
Mm-hmm.
It's one thing to have the goal. It's another if you don't have a strategy or a plan in place to make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other one there is talking about money, right? This is like one of the biggest taboos out there. Nobody likes to talk about money.
We do. We talk about it every week.
But they won't talk about money. So especially families, especially, among, spouses, among generational parents to children, talking about money is very important because this helps break some of these behaviors or breaks them down and starts to make people feel a little bit differently about how they're dealing with their finances and how things are handled in terms of dealing with everything.
And a lot of times, you're grown up and taught that it's rude to talk about money.
Yes.
It's rude to ask, well, what do you make? What are you invested in? It's almost like a function of taboo, like you said. That's not nice. Don't ask that person what they're making. Don't ask them, or talk about what you do. So talk about what you do, but don't talk about what you make. Right.
Right. It's just some way to have the dialogue, some way to open the conversation, because I think it's important, especially, like I said, inside families, whether it's among spouses, whether it's generationally with parents to children, it's important that they understand and are given some idea and how to talk about money, that it's not this taboo thing. Other things that you can do, get an emergency fund, right? Craig and I talked to everybody about the number one thing coming out of the pandemic here, if and when we ever do come out of the pandemic, is that you make sure that you've got money sitting in the bank. That should be the number one goal for everybody. And that's just money that's set aside that is not meant to be touched or used unless the absolute emergency occurs, i.e. the car breaks down, the water heater goes, something that is ultimately like, oh, I got to take care of this, because that's going to help you sort of alleviate some of these missteps that we've talked about.
And I heard a statistic just the other day, Tom, that 60% of Americans don't have $400 set aside in an emergency fund.
Correct. Right.
They're going, where are they going? They're going to their credit card. They're going into the debt cycle.
They go into debt. That's the whole point. That's absolutely what it is. And that's what we're trying to help get ahead of. That's the whole idea here, is to try to sort of set that up, have that be the automatic, the payroll deduction that's going in. And even if it's just $5 a paycheck, it's building up something that starts, like you said, breaks the habit of just, hey, I'm blowing everything I got.
Yep.
The other is life insurance. So one of the biggest things that happens, and it's unfortunate, but a passing of a family or a spouse specifically in a two-income earning household that's just making ends meet devastates the household. So one of the things you can do to make sure that that's not happening or not going to happen is to make sure that there is coverage. And if you're getting it through your employer, make sure you're taking advantage of it. If you're not getting it through your employer, find a way to have it, but you should have that conversation.
Well, I mean, I saw just a GoFundMe on Facebook the other day to help, someone's daughter, God forbid, died unexpectedly, and they do a GoFundMe just so they can bury her.
Correct.
Right? I mean, because it's 5,000 to 15,000 depending on the type of service that you have, right?
Yeah.
So you want to compound a tragedy with the inability to take care of that obligation. That's very difficult.
That's what I mean. It just, so it is one of those things to be considering. It's an action step that you can take. And then the last one there is about feeling good about you, right? So a lot of times, some of these behaviors that happen with our spending is because we're trying to make ourselves feel better. There's an endorphin rush that comes from buying something, the spending that we get. And if you get hooked on it, just like anything else, you're going to overspend. And you might necessarily not spend the right way. And what happens is sometimes we get ourselves into we keep talking about a cycle, but this is a vicious cycle where I spend, I get the rush, and then 3 days later, I'm pissed off at myself because I spent it, and now I'm down, and I'm in the dumps, and I'm in the dumps for the remainder of the week. So what do I got to do next week? I got to spend again because I got to get that feeling up, and then here we go, and I'm round and round. I never get out of it, basically.
Damn you, dopamine! Damn you!
So find something else that you can feel good. Whether it's, they still have libraries, right? So they've got a library. Go to the library, get a book, right? Read a book, do something, a community class or something that makes you feel good, that you're not out just doing the endorphin rush of spending money to make yourself feel better.
Yeah, but exercise gives you the same dopamine rush. Sure. And it's better for you, and it costs nothing. What
was the one I gave? I did it as one of the tips in one of the newsletters there about walking the dog, right? You're 40% calmer if you actually walk with the dog.
Oh, so you're walking the dog now? Is that what you're telling me?
No, see, I don't take the walk out at all now. Once I found that out, I said, no, that's it. I'm not walking the dog now. The last part here is that understand money is emotional, right? Money is not just numbers. It's not just facts and figures. Money is all about emotion. And this is a relationship that you have to take in consideration. You've got to look at and say, okay, I'm being honest with my finances. I'm being honest with myself. And this is how I'm spending. This is what I'm doing. And I either am going to continue doing that, or I'm going to make changes in my lifestyle and how I'm dealing with it. And this is what I'm going to do. Because otherwise, you're just going to keep repeating the same behaviors over and over again.
Yeah. And Tom, when we do financial planning for clients, half of, it's easy for anybody to go out there and, like you said, run the numbers. If you do all these things, that's all going to work out for you. Well, that's great. The issue is you're changing behavior. Whenever you go through changing behavior, there's a grieving process when you have change. And so you're either ready to change that behavior or you're not. And how many clients have we run into who go, I'm willing to change this, but I'm not willing to change that.
Yeah.
Right. And so the plan doesn't work because they're not ready to change yet. They're not really, so sometimes it's a slow process. Sometimes it's a fast process, depends on your motivation. So like I said, people can give you all the answers as far as, read a book and say, well, if you put money in here and you do this and that. The problem is it's really the managing the change and having an advisor who can help you manage the change of behavior so you can see the positive outcome. It's just like a trainer. They can tell you to go to the gym, lift this weight, lift that weight. But if you don't go and you don't lift it, well, nothing's going to change.
Correct.
Right. So, but if you have a trainer who can help you and motivate you and keep you on track, well, that helps you change your behavior until you can do it yourself.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And that's the big part of it. And so, for Craig and I, that's part of, our mission really is trying to sort of help everybody sort of figure that out, right? In the sports analogy, it's, find the goalpost. And, we put the clear vision for the road ahead, right? So where do you want to be in the path? Where do you want to get to? And how are you going to get there in ways that are going to work for you? Not necessarily how we want to do it, but it's how you're going to do it and how you're going to be able to formulate that and make that plan go forward. Which speaking for
You end up lost in the hayfield.
huh?
So you don't want to end up lost in that hayfield.
Yeah, no, not in the hayfield. In the heather, as they would say.
In the heather. Oh, there you go. Yes.
You'll get used to that when you go in a couple of weeks, the heather. So failing to plan is planning to fail. And that's a big part of it for us. We know everybody with good intentions, best course of action, but hard to get started. Like Craig said, it's one thing to say, oh yeah, I'm going to go to the gym every day. But, unless there's somebody there who's sort of saying, hey, why aren't you at the gym? Or why aren't you doing this? It doesn't end up happening. So that's what we offer to everybody, is that opportunity to sit down, have a conversation, see if we can help you sort of get a little path, get a little guidance going. And all you got to do is drop yes into the chat box. We'll reach out. We'll set up a time. It's complimentary. There's no cost. There's no obligation for doing it. It's part of what we do at Aries to try to help everybody out.
And if you're watching this on our YouTube channel as a replay, feel free to email us on that. We'll show those information on the next screen that we just came up.
Yeah, so this is just Craig and I in our more formal attire when we're out and about. That's in those. He just retired. I guess we're going to have to find new jerseys. It finally happened. We knew the GOAT was eventually going to retire. So we might have to retire the jerseys and next season come out and maybe Mac Jones jerseys or something else. But, he did TB12, finally retired. So we might have to retire those jerseys.
We'll see. He may pull a Brett Favre. You never know.
Yeah. So, oh, God bless. No, he wouldn't do that. Keeping the Think with a Drink going, the theme, it's what's on tap. So next week we are going to do creating a family budget. And this is different than individual budget because it takes into considerations everything that goes along with a family. And then on the 17th, we're going to do best places to retire, which may be a two-part series because we're realizing that there's a lot more involved with this. So it might be best places to retire in the domestic US and then best places to retire in the rest of the world type of thing. So we'll keep you posted on that, but that's what it looks like for right now. As Craig said, any questions out there in the chat box?
I have nothing at the moment.
Okay, so if there are any questions, shoot them in the chat box. But otherwise, you can go visit the website, www.ariesfoundation.org. Or Craig said that if you're listening to this, on our YouTube channel or following up, feel free to shoot us out an email because we're happy to answer any questions that you might have. That's something that we do. No problem. Just whenever you get a chance, just shoot us out. It's info@ariesfoundation.org. And if there's no questions, then I am going to say that is all for this evening.